Alright, gamers, we've got to talk about Ubisoft, and yeah, it's another train wreck. You'd think they'd learn by now, but nope. They're reportedly pressuring Steam to remove the concurrent player count feature. Why? Because Star Wars Outlaws flopped so hard it's practically creating a crater in the gaming world. Let's break this down because this story is equal parts hilarious and frustrating. First of all, shout out to Fandom Pulse for blowing the whistle on this. According to an insider, Ubisoft wants to kill Steam's concurrent player count tracker because it's embarrassing. And not just for Star Wars Outlaws, but potentially for other titles too. The insider said, get this. Ubisoft and other companies want to pressure Steam to stop the tracker from giving out info they want to keep to themselves. In other words, transparency is bad for business when your business is failing. And honestly, this whole situation reeks of we can't handle criticism, so let's silence the data. Let's talk about the game in question, Star Wars Outlaws. Despite the cope the community in Reddit is having right now, this thing had one of the worst launches I've seen in a while. Less than 2,500 concurrent players on Steam at peak. Let me put that into perspective for you. There are indie games out there developed by 3 people that do better numbers. And if that wasn't bad enough, the game is already 25% off on Steam and sitting at rank 66 in the bestsellers list. For a game with Star Wars in the title, that's not just bad, it's catastrophic. This brings us to Ubisoft's strategy of trying to spin their failures into successes. They're over here telling investors things like, Outlaws is one of the most immersive Star Wars games ever. Yeah, sure, and I'm the Queen of England. But here's the kicker. Steam's transparency doesn't let them lie. Investors can see the player count, and when those numbers don't match the hype, no amount of corporate buzzwords can save them. Here's what the insider said. They want to be able to present findings to investors so they can make it sound good. Translation, Ubisoft wants to hide their failures and sell you the illusion that everything's fine. Now let's take a step back and talk about why Steam's player count feature is important. For gamers like us, it's a quick way to see if a game is worth our time and money. It's like checking the crowd at a party. If it's empty, you probably don't want to go in. The insider even hinted that Ubisoft thinks these low player counts create a snowball effect. When people see no one's playing, they stay away too. And you know what? They're right. But instead of making better games, Ubisoft wants to hide the numbers so they can keep selling garbage. Genius, right? This isn't just a Ubisoft problem, by the way. Other industries are doing the same thing. The streaming platforms like Netflix have creative metrics for viewership. YouTube removed the dislike button, and Disney uses all kinds of weird math to inflate their streaming numbers. It's all about controlling the narrative. But in gaming, transparency is everything. We're spending $60, $70, or more on these games, and we deserve to know if they're actually good. Another thing that's rubbing people the wrong way is Ubisoft's insistence on DEI over actual gameplay quality. Now, don't get me wrong, diversity in games is great when it's done right, but when it's shoehorned in at the expense of fun, story, and polish, yeah, gamers are going to call that out, and Ubisoft doesn't seem to get that. Instead, they double down.
It's diverse, it can be inclusive, we can tell different stories that will have a pull for different people in different parts of the world, and we're not stuck telling the same story over and over again with the same heroes.
Yeah, Mark, but can we also have a game that's not riddled with bugs and isn't boring to play? Just a thought. Here's the sad part. Ubisoft's financials are in rough shape. They've admitted that AAA games need to sell around 4 to 5 million copies just to break even, and Outlaws hasn't even hit 2 million. That's a massive shortfall. And this isn't a one-off problem. Their other big franchise, Assassin's Creed, has been delayed. Even with a franchise as big as AC, people are starting to lose interest. Now, let's circle back to the sheer audacity of this move by Ubisoft. Think about it. Removing concurrent player counts is just the latest attempt to manipulate the narrative, but do they really think that's going to fool anyone? People aren't stupid. Gamers these days have access to tools like SteamDB and others to see the real data. They know how to look past the shiny trailers, and PR talk to see if a game is actually worth their time or money. And you know what? If they succeed in getting Valve to shut down these numbers, it sets a dangerous precedent. It's not just about Ubisoft anymore. This could open the floodgates for other studios to hide their failures. Instead of improving their games, they'll double down on tricking consumers and investors. Let's take a closer look at Star Wars Outlaws again. The fact that it's sold just over 1 million copies in 3 months is not just a flop, it's catastrophic when you consider the resources and expectations attached to it. For a company that projected 5 million units sold in its first month, barely hitting 20% of that in 3 months is beyond embarrassing. And instead of owning up to their mistakes and rethinking their approach, Ubisoft is more interested in burying the evidence. And let's talk about their investors for a second. These are the people putting actual money into the company, and even they are being kept in the dark. Yves Guillemot can evade questions all he wants, but the numbers don't lie. Lowering net bookings from $500 million to $352 million is not something you can spin, no matter how much PR sugar you pour on it. Now, if you're an investor, wouldn't you want to know how poorly a title is performing, especially if the company claimed it was going to dominate the market? This whole mess just highlights how disconnected Ubisoft has become, not just from its players, but from reality itself. And let's be real here, if this keeps happening, how much longer can Ubisoft survive? Gamers are tired of the same old tricks, rushed games, uninspired content, and now attempts to manipulate public perception. If they don't start delivering what players actually want, they're not just going to lose sales, they're going to lose what little trust and goodwill they have left. This is like instead of fixing the food, they just pull the curtains down. It's shady, and it's a disservice to gamers. If they actually listened to player feedback and focused on making great games, they wouldn't need to worry about transparency. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a gamer who's tired of being treated like a wallet with legs. So what do you think? Is Ubisoft out of line here? Should Steam cave to their demands? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked this breakdown, hit that subscribe button. Stay informed, stay critical, and don't settle for slop. I'll catch you in the next one.